So Matthew McConaughey is from Uvalde, Texas, and obviously this last mass shooting really shook him up. So he decided to go to the White House, and he gave a speech basically about the victims of the shooting and what we should do moving forward. And it was a really passionate speech, and this went massively viral. So I wanted to play some of it for you, and then we'll talk about it as we go here.
We also met Anna and Danilo, the mom and the stepdad of 9-year-old Maite Rodriguez. Now, Maite wanted to be a marine biologist. She was already in contact with Corpus Christi University of A&M for her future college enrollment. 9 years old. Maite cared for the environment so strongly that when the city asked her mother if they could release some balloons into the sky, in her memory, her mom said, "Oh, no, Maite wouldn't want to litter." Maite wore green high-top Converse with a heart she had hand-drawn on the right toe because they represented her love of nature. Camilla's got these shoes. Can you show these shoes, please? Wore these every day. Green Converse with a heart on the right toe. These are the same green Converse on her feet that turned out to be the only clear evidence that could identify her after the shooting. How about that? Maite wrote a letter. Her mom said if Maite's letter could help someone accomplish her dream, that then her death would have an impact. And it would mean her dying had a point and wasn't pointless. That it would make the loss of her life matter. The letter reads, "Marine biologist, I want to pass school to get to my dream college. My dream college is in Corpus Christi by the ocean. I need to live next to the ocean because I want to be a marine biologist. Marine biologists study animals and the water. Most of the time I will be in a lab. Sometimes I will be on TV."
He's going to go through, he already did a bunch of the victims and told everybody their backstory and told everybody their dreams and their wishes. The whole thing is 22 minutes, so I'm not showing the entire thing, but you should go watch the entire thing because he really gets into it. What you will see here in a little bit is he's going to start talking about what he views as solutions. And there's a lot to say about that. I guess I'll bite my tongue until it comes up, but just understand that the right is definitely going after him for the stuff that he says.
Then there was Ellie Garcia, a 10-year-old, and her parents, Stephen and Jennifer. Ellie loved to dance and she loved church. She even knew how to drive tractors and was already working with her dad and her uncle mowing yards. Ellie was always giving of her gifts, her time, even half-eaten food on her plate. They said around the house, we called her the great regifter. Smiling through tears, her family told us how Ellie loved to embrace, said she was the biggest hugger in the family. Now, Ellie was born Catholic, but had been going to Baptist church with her uncle for the last couple of years. Her mom and dad were proud of her because they said she was learning to love God no matter where. The week prior to her passing, she'd been preparing to read a verse from the Bible for the next Wednesday night's church service. The verse was from Deuteronomy 6:5. "And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might." That's who Ellie was becoming. But she never got to read it. Service on that Wednesday night. Then there was a fairy tale love story of a teacher named Irma and her husband Joe. What a great family this was. This was an amazing family. Camilla and I, we sat with about 20 of their family members in the living room, along with their 4 kids. Kids were 23, 19, 15, and 13. They shared all these stories about how Irma and Joe served the community and would host all these parties, and how Irma and Joe were planning on getting a food truck together when they soon retired. They were humble, hard-working people. Irma was a teacher who her family said went above and beyond and just couldn't say no to any kind of teaching. Joe had been commuting to and from work 70 miles away in Del Rio for years. Together they were the glue of the family. Both worked overtime to support their 4 kids. Irma even worked every summer when school was out. The money she had made 2 summers ago paid to paint the front of the house. The money she made last summer paid to paint the sides of the house. this summer's work was going to pay to paint the back of the house. Because Irma was one of the teachers who was gunned down in the classroom. Joe, her husband, literally died of heartache the very next day when he had a heart attack. They never got to paint the back of their house. They never got to retire. And they never got to get that food truck together. We also met a cosmetologist. Now, she was well-versed in mortuary makeup. That's the task of making the victims appear as peaceful and natural as possible for their open casket viewings. These bodies were very different. They needed much more than makeup to be presentable. They needed extensive restoration. Why? Due to the exceptionally large exit wounds of an AR-15 rifle. Most of the bodies so mutilated that only DNA test or green Converse could identify them. Many children were left not only dead, but hollow. So yes, counselors are going to be needed in Uvalde for a long time. Counselors are needed in all these places where these mass shooters have been for a long time. I was told by many that it takes a good year before people even understand what to do next. And even then, when they become secure enough to take the first step forward, a lifetime is not going to heal those wounds. But again, you know what every one of these parents wanted, what they asked us for? What every parent separately expressed in their own way to Camilla and me? That they want their children's dreams to live on. That they want their children's dreams to continue to accomplish something after they are gone. They want to make their loss of life matter. Look, we heard from so many people, right? Families of the deceased, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, Texas Rangers, hunters, Border Patrol, and responsible gun owners who won't give up their Second Amendment right to bear arms. And you know what they all said? We want secure and safe schools, and we want gun laws that won't make it so easy for the bad guys to get these damn guns. So, we know it's on the table. We need to invest in mental health care. We need safer schools. We need to restrain sensationalized media coverage. We need to restore our family values. We need to restore our American values. And we need responsible gun ownership. Responsible gun ownership. We need background checks. We need to raise the minimum age to purchase an AR-15 rifle.
Background checks. Raise the age to own an AR-15. Look at the solutions he's actually laying out. As you're about to see, they are phenomenally moderate. And still the far right is coming after him. Aggressively, too.
To 21. We need a waiting period for those rifles. We need red flag laws and consequences for those who abuse them.
Waiting periods and red flag laws. So the red flag law, for those of you who don't know, is if there's a situation where somebody's acting incredibly erratic, they're showing that they're going through some psychological issues, they have severe depression or severe anxiety, or they go around holding up a dead bag of cats like this shooter did, or they say stuff like, I'm going to do a mass shooting like this shooter did, that a red flag law would allow you to interject, have law enforcement interject, and basically confiscate their guns after a process that shows, hey, look, they shouldn't have a gun. It's so hard for me to wrap my mind around the idea that anybody opposes that. But there are plenty of people who oppose that. The overwhelming majority of the country, probably 80 or 90%, I haven't seen the most recent poll on that one, support it. But there's some percentage that very vocally opposes it, and they've now declared that Matthew McConaughey is the enemy, even though, clearly, he's a centrist. He's a centrist. He's talking about, American values and family values and mental health. He was talking about the media needs to hold back on their sensationalized coverage. He's very clearly a centrist, but he's like, hey man, there are some basic things that everybody I talk to says we should do this, whether they're on the right or the left, whether they own a gun or don't own a gun. And that's a bridge too far for a lot of people. So it's very, very passionate speech. It's really gut-wrenching when you hear the stories of the specific people involved. And that's the thing, man. These are all human beings with stories. They all had, experiences in their life, and he's trying to shed some light on, here are their dreams and their hopes and their wishes, and this is what they were like, etc. And so when you mix that with, here are the solutions, it's a very, very powerful speech. And I think it's a phenomenal speech. It's amazing that anybody's going after him. But I will say, I'm sure that if you did some sort of poll on people who watch this, what percentage thought it was a great speech and what percentage didn't, I think way more people would say it was a good speech than not. On Fox News, there were a handful of hosts who sort of went after him after this speech, but there also were some Fox News hosts who were like, that was powerful and he was spot on.
These are reasonable, practical, tactical regulations to our nation, states, communities, schools, and homes. Responsible gun owners are fed up with the Second Amendment being abused and hijacked by some deranged individuals.
Now, that's an interesting point. Look, guys, I own a gun. I'm not against responsible gun ownership. He owns many guns. But he's like, I don't want psychopaths doing mass shootings. And somehow that's fucking controversial. By the way, one of the lines of attack that the far right is using against Matthew McConaughey, and I saw Breitbart had a headline of an article on a tweet about this. They said, Matthew McConaughey has used, whatever the numbers are, 23 guns in 19 different scenes over the course of his career, and now he's for gun control. What a hypocrite. He's an actor. When you're acting, you are playing a role for a story. There's no hypocrisy at all. Like, they're a parody of themselves, man. They really are.
These regulations are not a step back. They're a step forward for a civil society and the Second Amendment. Look, is this cure-all? Hell no. But people...
That's another good, honest point, man. I talk about this all the time. The types of gun reforms that certainly I support, and most of the country supports, they would definitely really reduce the number of gun deaths in this country down from 39,000 a year. I don't know how low it would get, but there would still be gun deaths, absolutely. And look, you can have an honest debate and disagreement about the trade-off between increased freedom and lack of security. Yes, the more you can get more safety and security by cracking down more and more on freedom. That's why, like Japan, for example, basically has banned guns, and they have like 9 gun deaths a year. The only way you're really going to like eliminate or nearly eliminate gun deaths is to basically get rid of all the guns, ban them and confiscate them. I don't think we even can do that in this country. But, he's making an honest point here. Yeah, this is going to really help fight back against the problem. It's going to reduce the number of gun deaths, but it won't. It's not a cure-all. And I think that's an important point to make because oftentimes when these disagreements happen, the right sort of straw mans many who are for some more regulations as like, well, you think this is going to solve everything. And it's like, well, no, I don't. But I think that 10,000 gun deaths is way better than 39,000 gun deaths because it is. That's not to say those 10,000 lives don't matter. And again, I think it's an important discussion to have with people who are in favor of even more strict gun laws. Because some people would say, yeah, no, my goal is 0 gun deaths. And again, that's a conversation that can be had. But he's being honest and upfront and not playing hide the ball with the fact that we can do more regulations, but that wouldn't necessarily cure everything. It would just help a lot.
Hurting. Families are, parents are. And look, as divided as our country is, this gun responsibility issue is one that we agree on more than we don't.
That's absolutely true. I've showed you guys the polls a million times. Universal background checks. 80 to 90% of the country supports it. Ban on high-capacity magazines. I forget what it is, 70-something% support it. Ban on assault weapons, 63% supports it. Red flag laws, again, massive majority support it. Every basic gun reform that's floated is supported. The only things that are not supported are like full gun confiscation. So, if we live in what's supposed to be a representative democracy and a constitutional republic, then these things should be implemented, without a doubt. And the reason why they're not, and this is something that I think he misses, is the NRA and the gun lobby. They basically bought the entire Republican Party, all the elected officials, and they've bought like a handful of the Democrats. And that's all you need to totally jam up any sort of progress on the issue. You know, the power of the lobby is tremendous. So, and I do think he misses that, but if somebody were to explain it to him, I'm sure he'd be like, oh, yeah, that actually makes sense.
It really is. Look, this should be a nonpartisan issue. This should not be a partisan issue. There is not a Democratic or Republican value in one single act of these shooters. It's not. But people in power have failed to act. So we're asking you, and I'm asking you, will you please ask yourselves, can both sides rise above? Can both sides see beyond the political problem at hand and admit that we have a life preservation problem on our hands? So we got a chance right now to reach for and to grasp a higher ground above our political affiliations. A chance to make a choice that does more than protect your party. A chance to make a choice that protects our country now and for the next generation. We've got to take a sober, humble, and honest look in the mirror and rebrand ourselves based on what we truly value. What we truly value. We got to get some real courage and honor our immortal obligations instead of our party affiliations. Enough with the counterpunching. Enough of the invalidation of the other side. Let's come to the common table that represents the American people. Find a middle ground, the place where most of us Americans live anyway, especially on this issue.
So there's a couple things to say about that. He's right that his position that he's espoused does represent the middle of America. It represents the majority position in America. That's true. But what I think he needs to grasp with is the fact that in Washington, D.C., only the Democratic politicians agree with him. Only. Now, this is a rare issue where the Democrats are not also beholden to big money. Like virtually every other issue, Wall Street, the military-industrial complex, like Democrats are bought by the same donor class and corporations as the Republicans, so there's so much agreement. This is an issue where there actually is a lot of disagreement because Democrats simply don't take as much money from the NRA. Again, there's a handful who do, but the overwhelming majority don't. And so that sort of frees them up to be more aggressive and correct and in line with the American people on this issue. I don't think McConaughey has really grappled with that fact yet. That everything he's espousing here is something that the elected Republicans would disagree with, or at least 90% of them would disagree with. And, 90% of the elected Democrats agree with him. So I respect the fact that he's trying to do the whole, look, let's be above politics. This isn't a political issue. It is a political issue, but I like the sentiment behind it. Let's not make this political. Let's try to rise above and come together. And he's using very centristy language, and I respect the effort to try to use that to actually get something done. But I don't think he understands that what he's saying here is much more in line with what the elected Democrats believe, and not at all with what the elected Republicans believe. He's right again. He's a centrist and a moderate in this respect. That position is centrist and moderate among the American people, among the population. But in D.C., that position, they would argue his position is like a hard left position. They would.
Because I promise you, America, you and me, we are not as divided as we were being told we are. No. How about we get inspired? Give ourselves just cause to revere our future again. Maybe set an example for our children. Give us reason to tell them, hey, listen and watch these men and women. These are great American leaders right here. Hope you grow up to be like them. And let's admit it. We can't truly be leaders if we're only living for re-election. Let's be knowledgeable and wise and act on what we truly believe.
He seems to think the biggest issue preventing change is people trying to get reelected. I don't think it's that, because the polls are so supportive of these gun reforms and the Republicans block it. Again, it more comes down to the impact of the money from the gun lobby. So he misses that. He misses the corruption angle. I wish somebody would explain it to him, because I think he would understand it immediately if somebody explained it to him.
Again, we got to look in the mirror, lead with humility, and acknowledge the values that are inherent to, but also above politics. We got to make choices, make stands, embrace new ideas, and preserve the traditions that can create true progress for the next generation. With real leadership, let's start giving us all of us with real leadership, let's start giving all of us good reason to believe that the American dream is not an illusion. So where do we start? We start by making the right choices on the issue that is in front of us today. We start by making laws that save innocent lives and don't infringe on our Second Amendment rights. We start right now by voting to pass policies that can keep us from having as many Columbine, Sandy Hooks, Parklands, Las Vegases, Buffaloes, and Uvaldes from here on. We start by giving Alethea a chance to be spoiled by her dad. We start by giving Maite a chance to become a marine biologist. We start by giving Ellie a chance to read her Bible verse at the Wednesday night service. We start by giving Irma and Joe a chance to finish painting their house. Maybe retire, get that food truck. We start by giving McKenna, Layla, Miranda, Nevaeh, Jose, Javier, Tess, Rogelio, Eliana, Annabelle, Jackie, Azuya, JC, Jayla, Ava, Amory, and Lexi. We start by giving all of them our promise that their dreams are not going to be forgotten. We start by making the loss of these lives matter. Thank you.
Wow. Look, I respect it. He seems to genuinely care about this issue. And that was an impressive speech. And again, I think most people who watch it are going to be blown away by it, and only a small percentage. A fringe, political right-wing media and some far-right politicians, they're going to hate it, but virtually everybody else is going to be like, God damn. So, watching this, I think, if he does eventually run for president, he's really talented, and he can go places. I think he's in some respects, he's a little bit naive. I'm not saying that as a shot at him, but he's a little bit naive. He doesn't seem to understand the corruption angle of it. He seems to really have that enlightened centrist vibe to him, while missing some crucial facts about American politics. But again, I respect it because if this sort of rhetoric does have the potential to bring people together and force change in a different kind of way, almost like, because he's like shaming the people who aren't acting on this, So ultimately, I respect it. Powerful speech, and I want to be optimistic and say maybe this leads to something, but I can't bring myself to that position. I'll have to wait and see. But if there is anything that is done on this issue, it would probably be a massively watered-down version of the things that even McConaughey wants. He listed the things he likes there. Even all those reforms, we're not going to get all those reforms because, again, the Republicans are bought by the gun lobby. So maybe we get a red flag law, maybe, which would be good, but nowhere near enough. But that's the only thing that we potentially might be able to get. But I still think the betting odds are on the side of, we're not going to get anything. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You want to.